Well, lucky you. You've made it to my next video. 1 or 2 years later, something like that. Which is a good thing, because it means that I've been able to sleep at night. I had started making these videos in a very strange part of my life. Well, my life is still very strange, but it's a little bit more healthy now. And I have less reasons to stay up all night, which is nice. So things have been a little bit more easy for me, but things don't stay easy for very long. So here we are, we're back and we're reading. And when things aren't easy, I like to read something from the Beat Generation. And so we're gonna read the first 2 chapters of Big Sur by Jack Kerouac. Our friend Jack. And just before we start, to talk a little bit about these 2 first chapters, and they give a really good example of how weird identity is. And in this introduction, Jack Kerouac is giving us an insight into his own mind, which is always nice to get an insight into someone's mind because it really makes you feel less crazy. So he's butting up against his new public identity, his identity with his friends and his identity with himself, and even we get a little sense of his identity with his family, if only just by a mention of him living with his mom. And it's important to remember that identity isn't always in your own hands. And you can really make a job out of it to try and change things. But in these 2 chapters, we see his Jack's self-awareness and trying to I don't know, what would you say? Win against himself and get to this cabin in Big Sur. So let's go ahead and jump into it. This is chapter 1, or chapters 1 and 2 of Big Sur by Jack Kerouac. The church is blowing a sad wind-blown Kathleen on the bells in the Skid Row slums as I wake up all woebegone and goopy, groaning from another drinking bout, and groaning most of all because I'd ruined my secret return to San Francisco by getting silly drunk while hiding in the alleys with bums, and then marching forth into North Beach to see everybody, although Lorenz Monsanto and I had exchanged huge letters outlining how I would sneak in quietly, call him on the phone using a code name like Adam Yulch or Lalagi Pulvertaft, also writers. And then he would secretly drive me to his cabin in the Big Sur woods, where I would be alone and undisturbed for 6 weeks. Or just chopping wood, drawing water, writing, sleeping, hiking, etc., etc. But instead, I've bounced drunk into his City Lights bookshop at the height of Saturday night business, which is also really interesting to think about. That'd be cool if it was Saturday night and the party was at the bookshop. Sorry, back to the story. Everyone recognized me, even though I was wearing my disguise-like fisherman's hat and fisherman's coat and pants waterproof. And it all ends up roaring drunk in all the famous bars. The bloody king of the beatniks is back in town buying drinks for everyone. Now I'd also like to pause and just mention that he's using a lot of quotation marks, and I'm really enjoying it. Alright, the king of the beatniks is back in town buying drinks for everyone. 2 days of that, including Sunday, the day Lorenzo is supposed to pick me up at my secret, there you go, Skid Row Hotel, the Mars on 4th and Howard. But when he calls for me, there's no answer. He has the clerk open up the door, and what does he see but me out on the floor among bottles, Ben Fagin stretched out partly beneath the bed, and Robert Browning, the beatnik painter, out on the bed snoring. So says to himself, I'll pick him up next weekend. I guess he wants to drink for a week in the city, like he always does, I guess. So off he drives to his Big Sur cabin without me, thinking he's doing the right thing. But my God, when I wake up, and Ben and Browning are gone, and they've somehow dumped me on the bed, and I hear I'll take you home again, Kathleen, being belt-roped, so sad in the fog winds out there that blow across the rooftops of eerie old hangover Frisco. Wow. I've hit the end of the trail, and I can't even drag my body anymore, even to a refuge in the woods, let alone stay upright in the city a minute. It's the first trip I've taken away from home, my mother's house, since the publication of Road, the book that made me famous. And in fact, so much so, I've been driven mad for 3 years by endless telegrams, phone calls, requests, mail, visitors, reporters, snoopers, a big voice saying in my basement window as I prepare to write a story, "Are you busy?" Or there was the time the reporter ran upstairs to my bedroom as I sat there in my pajamas, trying to write down a dream. Teenagers jumping the 6-foot fence I'd built round my yard for privacy. Parties with bottles yelling at my study window, "Come on out and get drunk. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy." A woman coming to my door and saying, "I'm not going to ask you if you're Jack Deleuze because I know he wears a beard. Can you tell me where I can find him? I want a real beatnik at my annual shindig party." Drunken visitors puking in my study, stealing books and even pencils. Uninvited acquaintances staying for days because of the clean beds and good food my mother provided. Me drunk practically all the time to put on a jovial cap and to keep up with all this, but finally realizing I was surrounded and outnumbered and had to get away to solitude again or die. So Lorenzo Monsanto wrote and said, "Come to my cabin, no one'll know," etc. So I had sneaked into San Francisco, as I say, coming 3,000 miles from my home in Long Island, Northport, in a pleasant roomette on the California Zephyr train, watching America roll by outside my private picture window. Really happy for the first time in 3 years. Staying in the roomette all 3 days and all 3 nights with my instant coffee and sandwiches. Up the Hudson Valley and over across New York State to Chicago, and then the plains, the mountains, the desert, the final mountains of California. All so easy and dreamlike compared to my old harsh hitchhikings before I made enough money to take transcontinental trains. All over America, high school and college kids thinking Jack Deleuze is 26 years old and on the road all the time hitchhiking. Well, there I am, almost 40 years old, bored and jaded in a roomette bunk, crashing across that salt flat. But in any case, a wonderful start towards my retreat, so generously offered by sweet old Monsanto, And instead of going through smooth and easy, I wake up drunk, sick, disgusted, frightened, in fact terrified by that sad song across the roofs, mingling with the lachrymose cries of a Salvation Army meeting on the corner below. Satan is the cause of your alcoholism. Satan is the cause of your Oh, I almost said he's the cause of your immortality. Could be. Satan is the cause of your immorality. Satan is everywhere, working to destroy you unless you repent now. And worse than that, the sound of old drunks throwing up in rooms next to mine, the creak of hall steps, the moans everywhere, including the moan that had awakened me in my own moan in the lumpy bed, a moan caused by a big roaring woo-woo in my head that had shot me out of my pillow like a ghost. And here is chapter 2. And I look around the dismal cell. There's my hopeful rucksack, all neatly packed with everything necessary to live in the woods, even unto the minutest first aid kit and diet details in every neat little sewing kit, cleverly reinforced by my good mother, like extra safety pins, buttons, special sewing needles, little aluminum scissors. The hopeful medal of St. Christopher, even which she'd sewn on the flap. The survival kit, all in there down to the last little survival sweater and handkerchief and tennis sneakers for hiking. But the rucksack sits hopefully in a strewn mess of bottles, all empty. Excuse me, I hope I don't start hiccuping. Give me a second. I think we're okay. But the rucksack sits hopefully in a strewn mess of bottles, all empty. Empty poor boys of white port, butts, junk, horror. I said that kind of weird. Butts, junk, horror. One fast move or I'm gone, I realize. Gone the way of the last 3 years of drunken hopelessness, which is a physical and spiritual and metaphysical hopelessness you can't learn in school, no matter how many books on existentialism or pessimism you read, or how many jugs of vision-producing ayahuasca you drink, or mescaline take, or peyote goop up with. That feeling when you wake up with the delirium tremens, with the fear of eerie death dripping from your ears like those special heavy cobwebs spiders weave in the hot countries. The feeling of being a bent-back mudman monster groaning underground in hot steaming mud, pulling a long hot burden nowhere. The feeling of standing ankle-deep in boiled pork blood. The feeling of being up to your waist in a giant pan of greasy brown dishwater and not a trace of suds left in it. The face of yourself you see in the mirror, with its expression of unbearable anguish, so hagged and awful with sorrow you cannot even cry for a thing so ugly, so lost, no connection whatever with early perfection, and therefore nothing to connect with tears or anything. It's like William Seward Burroughs' stranger suddenly appearing in your place, in the mirror. Enough! One fast move or I'm gone. So I jump up, do my headstand first to pump blood back into the hairy brain, take a shower in the hall, new t-shirt and socks and underwear, pack vigorously, hoist the rucksack, and run out, throwing the key on the desk and hit the cold street and walk fast to the nearest little grocery store to buy 2 days of food. Stick it in the rucksack, hike through lost alleys of Russian sorrow where bums sit, head on knees in foggy doorways in the goopy, eerie city night. I've got to escape or die, and into the bus station. In a half an hour into the bus seat, the bus says Monterey, and off we go down the clean neon highway, and I sleep all the way, waking up amazed, and well again, smelling sea air, the bus driver shaking me. End of the line, Monterey. And by God, it is Monterey. I stand up sleepy in the 2 a.m., seeing vague little fishing masts across the street from the bus driveway. Now all I've got to do to complete my escape is get 14 miles down the coast to the Raton Canyon Bridge and hike in. Well, thanks, Jack. We'll let the train go by. I always like to read the beats out loud because they have these long run-on sentences and you can get a good rhythm going. Very rhythmic writing. Well, I hope this has put a little peace into your brain. Maybe made you feel a little less like a crazy person. Or not that you feel less like a crazy person, maybe you just feel a little bit better being a crazy person. So, I'll see you next time, and maybe that next time will be less than a year from now, so we'll see what happens. Have a good one, friends.